Right now at 6, a family searching for answers after an unprovoked murder on a MAX train.
It was so senseless. There was nothing that Mike was doing.
Plus, facing tough questions about the role of the first spouse.
We're figuring this out as we go.
What Oregon's governor is now saying about ethics. And call it the Oscars of the culinary world.
I'm super stoked for McMinnville that we get this opportunity to kind of be on this national platform.
The local chefs and restaurants now one step closer to the top. Thanks for joining us at 6. I'm David Molko. For the first time, we are hearing from the family of the man who was brutally murdered on a MAX train in what police are calling an unprovoked attack. Michael Brady, a husband and the father of a 6-year-old boy, was on his way home from work Friday evening when another passenger fatally stabbed him. His niece telling us Michael was the glue that kept family members together. Tim Gordon has our top story.
I've gotten some terrible calls in my lifetime, but that was by far the worst.
That is the moment Rev Miller found out her uncle, Michael Brady, was killed on a MAX train. Brady grew up in Indiana, and Miller says he lived here in Portland for about 15 years.
Yeah, like Indiana wasn't his jam. So he kind of made his way out west.
Court documents show Brady boarded the train at Pioneer Courthouse Square and was stabbed in an unprovoked attack at the 82nd Avenue MAX stop last Friday night around 6.
It's infuriating. I'm like the only emotion I'm sad, obviously, but I am so angry. I am angry at the justice system. I am so angry at this man for doing this because it was so senseless. There was nothing that Mike was doing.
The suspect, 51-year-old Shondell Larkin, told police a voice he heard made him believe the victim was going to kill him.
He was minding his business. He was listening to his earphones, and that's what he normally did. He would call his family, like he would talk to people on his commute.
Miller says Brady leaves behind a wife and young son.
My uncle was a very kind and very loving person. He adored his son. Like, his son hung the moon. He adored his wife.
She says her uncle was like an older brother to her and was a great role model.
He worked hard, and that's what he should be remembered for, because he was awesome. He was great.
Tim Gordon reporting there. Late this afternoon, Michael's wife, Nora, sent us a statement saying, quote, "I want people to know that my husband was a great human being, a loving father of a 6-year-old boy, and a loving husband. Michael Brady was a wonderful person." The suspect appeared in court on Monday. His arraignment is scheduled for next week. In your headlines this evening, Portland police are looking for a driver they say hit and killed a woman on Interstate 5 and then took off. This was just after 8 last night on the exit from southbound I-5 to Broadway near the Moda Center. The woman died by the time officers arrived. So far, authorities have not released a description of a suspect or vehicle. If you know anything, you're asked to call Portland Police. In North Portland, police arrested more than a dozen people Tuesday in a neighborhood crime mission. Authorities say this was in response to complaints of chronic criminal activity, drug dealing, and livability issues in the Jansen Beach and Delta Park areas. Officers say they stopped 20 vehicles, 3 of which were stolen, and seized fentanyl, meth, and a handgun. They arrested 13 people, including a suspect wanted for aggravated identity theft and elder abuse fraud in Clackamas County. The results of a new regional study are showing us just how much the impact of heat can vary across the Portland area. So last summer, volunteers took hundreds of thousands of temperature readings in all 3 Oregon metro counties. The temperatures varied as much as 17 degrees depending on where they were taken. The 3 counties will use these results to help plan for hotter summers due to climate change, including changing their emergency responses, climate adaptation plans, and urban planning.
And that helps us prioritize resources. It can be a good check for us to make sure, do we have a cooling center that's open in that part of the county, for example, during a heat event?
Well, you can check out Multnomah County's website for the full report and the results in your neighborhood. And Oregon's electric vehicle rebate program officially reopens today. This program gives money back to people who buy or lease EVs. The DEQ suspended it last May because it was so popular. Funding ran out, but now there's another $8 million available. Buyers can claim a portion of that if they purchase or lease a vehicle between today and June 3rd. More details in Chris McGinnis's story. It's up for you at KGW.com. Joe?
David, remember this time last night, we're looking at temperatures close to 80 degrees. Now take a look at the board. These are the big temperature swing. A lot of locations are looking at temperatures anywhere from 20 to 25 degrees cooler tonight from where we were just 24 hours ago. Look at Bend. Big dip in your temperatures. Same with down in southern Oregon. Both Medford and Klamath Falls are seeing temperatures about 30 degrees cooler at this hour because of that cold front that moved on shore late last night that brought in the cool, cloudy, and showery conditions. Right now we're seeing a temperature of 51 degrees. We're dry for the time being, and I think for the most part we are going to be seeing more dry than wet conditions the rest of your Wednesday night. But our cool and rainy weather pattern continues the next few days. But if you're going to be traveling over the higher elevations, over in the high country, the snow levels drop down below past levels tonight and into tomorrow, right around 1,500 feet overnight. They'll jump back up to about 2,000 feet tomorrow. But heavy mountain snow is in the forecast for tomorrow afternoon and into Friday morning. Some models are suggesting we could see close to 18 inches over the next few days throughout the Oregon Cascades. And as we look at the radar right now, we're just picking up some spotty showers, but that is the next system that's going to be moving on shore, bringing a few more cool, cloudy, and showery conditions over the next couple of days. I do have a bit of a warm up. I'll let you know just how warm things get over the next few days, and that's coming up in my detailed forecast about 10 minutes from now.
Yeah, what a difference a couple of days makes, right? Thank you, Joe. In Salem, Governor Tina Kotek has signed the state's first major campaign finance reform legislation in decades into law. House Bill 4024 passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, as well as the support of government watchdog groups and labor unions. It puts stricter limits on how much so-called small donor committees can donate to candidates. It also slashes the max amounts that nonprofit membership organizations are allowed to give to candidates. However, it does not take effect until 2027 after the next gubernatorial and statewide elections. And speaking of the governor, let's bring in Thomas Schultz live outside the state capitol in Salem, because Thomas, the governor also faced tough questions from reporters today about the role of Oregon's First Lady. Bring us up to speed here.
Yeah, well, David, Tina Kotek, of course, met with those reporters today about the role of her wife, the first spouse, and to understand if she can create an office for the first spouse. Now, of course, she plans to do this, and she admitted that there's not a clear role that her wife could hold in her office, which is why she's bringing in the Ethics Commission to understand what guidance they have for her.
We're figuring this out as we go.
A little more than a week after reports Governor Tina Kotek is creating an office for her wife, Amy Kotek Wilson, the governor is looking for clarity on possible roles a first spouse can hold.
There has been no guidance from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission on what is appropriate for the role of a first spouse since the first spouse was made a public official.
On Friday, Governor Kotek will submit questions to the Ethics Commission. It's not yet clear what the questions will be. Kotek's decision to create an office of the first spouse coincides with changes in her own office, with 3 staff members, including Kotek's chief of staff, stepping down late last month. Kotek pushed back on the reasoning for those resignations.
Those are personnel decisions, and I have not commented on that.
And for the first time Wednesday, Kotek said publicly her wife could help Oregon battle its addiction crisis. With a master's degree in behavioral health and experience with Oregon's behavioral challenges.
I think her professional experience and lived experience, we need to understand how that can be added into the mix to actually solve problems for Oregonians.
Kotek Wilson's role will be as an unpaid volunteer, though she has a paid advisor who will work with Kotek Wilson over the next 6 months to establish the office of the first spouse. And last month, Kotek directed Oregon State Police to provide security for all events Kotek Wilson attends.
It is commonplace in other states that first spouses have security protection.
Still, in 2015, Governor John Kitzhaber resigned amid a scandal over his fiance's role in his administration. Governor Tina Kotek, then House Speaker, was among those who called for his resignation. And when asked Wednesday if spouses of agency directors should have roles, she said no, though she didn't see a connection between that and the office of the spouse she's creating.
I don't believe it's apples to apples, and you're talking about the spouses of directors of agencies. I guess I don't see the comparison.
Now, when asked what role her wife would have, Governor Kotek eluded the question. That role seems to still be being determined, though those questions that are going to the Ethics Commission on Friday, those will be publicly available on the same day. David?
Yeah, I'm curious to know what they ask and what the answers are. Thank you, Thomas. An Oregon congressman wants to close a loophole he says is contributing to the fentanyl crisis. This all has to do with billions of packages, or a billion rather, that enter the U.S. each year unchecked and untaxed. John Adams walks us through what's going on.
Congressman Earl Blumenauer says a little-known trade provision is allowing fentanyl or fentanyl precursor materials to enter the United States. Now, it's called the de minimis loophole, and it has been exploited in recent years to flood U.S. markets with cheap goods and to ship fentanyl into the country. That's because de minimis allows packages valued at less than $800 to pass into the country uninspected.
Right now, the fentanyl situation is being delivered directly to people's homes, uninspected, untaxed. It couldn't be easier for them to be engaged in drug dealing.
Business leaders and law enforcement advocates also spoke at today's roundtable in support of the legislation. Now, Blumenauer says a bill to close the loophole passed the House in 2020 but was held up in the Senate. He believes the measure has enough support to get across the finish line this time around, with the extra support from labor and police unions across the country.
That is John Adams in the newsroom there. We're following up this evening on 80 asylum seekers in Portland who could end up without a place to stay as soon as Friday. That is when the funding for their temporary housing runs out. And so far, no government agency has stepped up to help. These asylum seekers have been staying in a Northeast Portland hotel as the federal government processes their claims. A nonprofit had been paying to house them. It is now asking Multnomah County for help. So far, the county has only offered tents.
I think we all agree that the right answer is not to hand people tents and say, welcome, you can join the population of homeless people on the streets of Portland. That is the wrong answer.
I'm directing Multnomah County to look for resources to help pay for one more month to help these families.
A state program that paid to help asylum seekers ended this past December. We have asked the governor's office about this for the past 2 days, and we still have not heard back. Much more from elected officials, plus hear from one woman seeking asylum, is coming up at 6:30 on The Story, only here on KGW. And straight ahead at 6, a sneak peek at what a downtown treasure will look like after a multi-million-dollar transformation. Plus, serving up excellence, the 6 Oregon restaurants and chefs that have just been named finalists for the Oscars of the culinary world.